So next up, not probably your most glorious period, was going to Chelsea after
You're
spending
very
4 or 5 years.
generous.
Well, I'm a journalist. I'm always strict with the truth. So you moved there because Blackburn got relegated, and I don't know if that was an
Yeah.
influence to you, and you're suddenly playing for Chelsea. You're not in near Clitheroe. You're moving to London, I assume, or
Mm.
maybe just outside London. Can you remember again how different that was? Because it must have been a huge, huge switch from what you were used to at Norwich and at Blackburn. Suddenly,
Yeah.
Chelsea, we know, are a big club. Sometimes they don't have the best of seasons, but they're always a big club. They're always there or thereabouts in terms of people thinking, oh, they're going to have a chance. So the first game you might not remember, but more to
I
do
do.
with you do. Oh, okay. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the first game you had for them.
Well, yeah. First of all, going there anyway, I spoke to Gianluca Vialli, who I liked very, very
Mm-hmm.
much. He was a brilliant striker. And with Chelsea, this was the time when they started to really have a go. I mean, they had some excellent players. They
Yeah.
signed Didier Deschamps that summer, Desai, Leboeuf, Gianfranco
Mm.
Zola, Di
Yeah.
Matteo, Roberto Di Matteo. Um, so yeah, and I'd gone and oh look, I mean, in terms of where I lived and my house and the environment I was in, I don't use any of those sort of outside things as an excuse of what happened at Chelsea. I think, basically I'd missed a couple of chances on my debut. Chelsea ended up winning 4-0 against Sunderland. Gus Poyet scored a
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful
Yeah.
volley. Um, I'd missed a lot of the previous season, and I'd had an injury, and I'd gone through
Right.
pre-season, and maybe I don't look. I'm not making excuses because essentially it's down to me. And I'd gone through pre-season, and I'd started, and I think I maybe lost a bit of confidence. Always think about that time, and always used to really analyze my game very, very,
Mm-hmm.
closely. I rarely came off a pitch, and my driving force was always what could I have done better? And that was, a lot of that was from my upbringing as much as anything. My dad, don't rest on your laurels, always do
Yeah.
more and what have you. So I missed a couple of chances on my debut. Maybe I let that affect me. And the biggest thing, and I think I've said this many times, as a striker, Richard, you can't hesitate. You can't have those sort of doubts in your mind, especially at the top level, because you get found out. And I think that's what happened. In general, some of the sort of stuff written about me at that particular time was over the top. My all-round game was pretty okay, but you're not judged on your all-round game when you go for £10 million. Big
No.
move. You're judged on goals, and I get that, and I understand that, and that's absolutely fair. And
Mm.
and spot on. I didn't score goals. I felt I let Viali down really because £10 million, a lot of money,
Yeah.
and he'd made um, a beeline for me. So I liked him a lot, and I'd gone there, and he was a good guy. Helped me a lot, talked to me a lot, took me in his office a lot when things weren't working. Um, help, ironically enough, helped me with my finishing. It was actually a volleying session where I ended up scoring one of my best career goals against Juventus in the Champions League, which would
Yeah.
have been down to Gianluca Vialli and taking me out in the afternoon, bouncing balls in the little D area, and just teaching me or helping me with my technique about getting my hip up nice and high.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and that all sort of came good when I played for Celtic against Juventus in the Champions League and scored really, that was a good by my standards, a good technical volley, and that was all down to Viali and his coaching.
So it wasn't off the shin then, this goal. It was
No,
actually a
that was
clean strike.
unusual. That was that's very unusual, yeah, for me.
And as you said, Chelsea wasn't a great time, and I believe you just scored one goal. Can you remember the one goal you
No,
scored for
that's not
Chelsea?
true. That's not
Oh,
true.
In the
That is,
league, possibly in the league.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Because I did
You know
score
what the
against Scott.
journalists are like. We
I
slip it
did,
around
yeah,
inside there.
yeah. I did score against Skonta Riga,
Okay.
who were a very strong Skonta Riga side at that
Oh
particular
God,
time,
yeah. There
and
was their golden
Hull.
period.
Yeah, it was, and Hull were
Ah,
flying in.
of
I
course
think
they were.
in Division Four. I think they were no
Possibly,
in
yeah,
the FA Cup. So no, so I scored my one goal. It was against Manchester United. It wasn't a 5-0 win. So,
yeah,
but no, I would have liked to have scored a few more, and so would the Chelsea fans have liked that.
yeah. I know a few, and they send their best regards. Obviously, uh, we move on to your time at Celtic again. It's a big move because you're moving from Chelsea, where it hasn't gone so well. You're suddenly going to Celtic, whereas we know the Goldfish Bowl is getting tighter and tighter, and the microscopic view of players. I think it's probably the most intense city in which to play football. So again, for you, was this experience something you really need to quickly acclimatise to, or did you come through with your usual Sutton way of just dealing with it as it came?
Yeah, I've got to say I didn't know what hit me really.
Yeah,
Going up to Glasgow because of the Goldfish Bowl. I've got used to it over the years now. But you
yeah,
talk about an intense city, and there is this rivalry. I mean, I'm recording this from Glasgow at this
yeah.
moment in time. Um, but do you know what? Well, I had 5.5 years up here, and in general, Celtic fans, Rangers fans, a lot of the stuff is tongue in cheek. I love Glasgow as a city. There are elements on both sides where
Yeah.
they go too far and extremes, but that goes for a lot of cities around the UK. But Scottish football was good to me. I think I was very lucky to play under Martin O'Neill, who'd just gone up from Leicester City and taken the job, and he was highly sought after by Leeds, who were flying at that particular time. So that was quite a big deal.
Mm.
And I played in a period. I played with Larson, Paul Lambert, Neil Lennon, guy called
Mhm.
Lubo Moravcik, who was a genius, and the Rangers team. They had Arthur Newman, they had the De Boer twins, uh, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. I mean, they were,
Mhm.
they were a proper outfit. So for those
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
5 years, I mean, we were hammer and tongs, toe to toe, and to play in those games with the intensity, the
Mhm.
feeling, the animosity.
Mm.
I mean, it's a really special period, and because of what happened at Chelsea, I always felt I had my best 5 years at Celtic in
Mhm.
my mind, and that's not detract taking anything away from what happened at Norwich because I loved it. What happened at Blackburn? It's the fact I don't
Mm.
really think. I think when I went through that not early part of my career, those years at Norwich and Blackburn, it took me sort of the year at Chelsea when things didn't go well for me because everything had
Mm.
gone like through the roof.
Yeah.
It took me that year when I hadn't had a good time to actually I'd never actually thought about what I actually had and never absorbed going in every day to training and
Mm.
sort of enjoyed it. And when I went to Celtic and things started to go well there, I absolutely loved it. I used to think, blimey, I'm lucky. I'm very lucky to be in this position, and I took everything in and really appreciated what I had and was part of a successful team.
Yeah.
And I loved it. So we had a good run in the UEFA Cup 2003.
Mhm.
Ended up losing the final to Porto, the Divers of Porto, Mourinho's team. But I'm not
Right.
bitter.
No, no,
But no,
no.
in the end, it's about winning, and they found a way to win. They won the Champions League the following season. But
Yeah.
that whole period, I loved it, and to play with the likes of Larson and in front of the Celtic fans, 60,000 fans every week. Uh, Easy place to play when things are going well. but when things
Mhm.
aren't going well, then it's it can be very tough. But no, we
Yeah.
loved it up in Scotland. My family liked it, and then Martin ended up leaving, and Gordon Strachan came, and we fell out after about 3 minutes,
Oh, well,
which was
there we
quite
go.
long for me.
Love that. Yeah, it's usually a 2 minute thing, isn't it? Celtic, do you remember your first game for Celtic? Because it wasn't a
Yeah.
bad one. What happened
No,
there?
because albeit now this is uh, I mean this is you think about this as a bad investment. I'd gone to Chelsea for 10 million. I'd then devalued £4 million in a year, but I was still a Scottish record transfer fee.
Right,
Uh, and guess what comes with the fee? You got to
the
you
expectation.
got to
Yeah.
score the expectation. So I ended up scoring the winner at Tannadice against Dundee United from a yard, not off my shin,
Oh,
but
which
no
part of the
off.
body did you use for that one then?
Just a
An
little bit
element of
harder than
your
my
foot.
ankle. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay, right.
but that was big for me. Henrik Larsson scored do you watch the two goals that day? Big contrast. One of them's brilliant. One of them's a stuffy tap in. But that was really
Yeah.
important to me. And then in the early, the early weeks of that, the game, which I mean, people they do talk about it now, and a bit of a game changer for Celtic was my first Rangers game when we beat them 6-2, and that
Yeah.
was a marker. I don't think Celtic have scored six against Rangers since then, but that was a special day. We ended up losing at Ibrox in the November 5-1.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
so we hadn't cracked it with the 6-2, but in terms of what Martin had achieved in a short space of time, Rangers had won the league by I think 21 points or something like that the previous season. So that was a bit of a marker. Martin had a marvelous sort of character and understood what was required and galvanized sort of everybody at the club, and got the support, everybody at the club pulling in the same direction. And even what was good about Martin that particular season is I don't know whether the Celtic fans liked it, but he always took the pressure off the players. Talked about Rangers
Hmm.
being the benchmark. Rangers are the benchmark, even though when
Yeah.
we were sort of pretty much nearly over the line, and he's a shrewd old cookie. Martin
Oh yeah.
knew his stuff.
Yeah.
Used to frighten the life out of him. I mean, he's one guy you don't want to get in an argument with.
Yeah.
He's highly intelligent. Used to just scare us all.
Right. Okay. Well, that's quite a good tactic sometimes. And I know
Yeah,
you scored the first and the last goals in that game when, as you say, it was 6-2. And Martin O'Neill, as a Nottingham man, as you say, you were a Forest fan when you were younger. Was the fact that Martin O'Neill became your manager and he had such a successful period? He was in Clough's team, won the
yeah.
first division, 2 European Cups, thrown a couple of League Cups. When you're a player and you've got a manager there who, again, it goes a little bit back to Dalglish, who you are probably in awe of as a young boy watching these players going, oh my word. Then suddenly they're your manager. Is that something that again you go, whoa, this is a really important moment in my life and I am loving it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I used to admire Martin. When he was at Forest, and he was a household name. They were my team when I
Yeah.
was younger. But I
Mhm.
used to prefer John Robertson, Martin's assistant, uh, to Martin. I've never told him
Right.
that,
Oh,
and
good.
I wouldn't be foolish enough to tell Martin that. But he was Clough's favourite, so
Yeah.
Martin probably wouldn't understand, and he wouldn't forgive me saying that. But John Robertson was an absolute genius, an
Yeah.
absolute genius of a player he was, and he was Martin's assistant and sort of the
Right.
go between
Okay.
the players and the manager. And no, I used
Right.
to. We used to do crosswords together every morning. John could do the Times crossword. John was amazing because he used to teach me how to
Wow.
do the cryptic crosswords. Not that it sort of helped me that much.
Yeah.
I could have a go at the Telegraph and do okay. He could do
Mm.
I mean, he was like
That's.
ridiculous. I mean, the way his brain worked was ridiculous. You know, he's a wonderful player. Um,
Mm.
but no, I had a good and Steve Walford, who's
Mm.
former Arsenal, Tottenham.
Yeah.
You know, he played with Martin at Norwich. He was the coach. But no, I absolutely loved. I loved going in every day and to
Yeah.
the you
Yeah.
know the crack in the dressing room, and we had a lot of older, experienced players, and you used to have to be on your toes. But I
Mm.
could handle myself okay.
Yeah. 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 I'm sure you could. John Robertson, interesting you mentioned him because the first episode of this particular podcast was with Darren Fletcher, and he maintains Darren Fletcher, the commentator role, the ex-Man United player. He maintains that Robertson is the best player that Forest have ever had because he had
Yeah,
the ability, he both left and right. You know, he was pretty ambidextrous, if we call it, which is quite unusual in footballers, and just was so integral to Forest's brilliant period at that time. You know, late 70s, early 80s. And he apparently Darren still keeps in touch with me. He lives quite close to me.
yeah. No,
Yeah, so,
I stay in touch with John. I mean, you all I think like you think about some of the silly transfer fees there are that
yeah,
now and the money. I mean, God, how much would John Robertson be worth in today's
yeah, no,
market? I mean, what players going for more than 100 million. I mean, he'd
yeah,
be up near the other 200, I think, 150, 200 million. He was an absolute genius. You quite rightly said, and you know, Darren was a big fan of his. A guy
yeah,
who could, you know, you see a lot of players where they are predictable. John Robertson was anything but predictable. He could drive the outside. He could come in
yeah,
and shoot. He was so clever.
yeah. No, I do remember him and a great player, and also
He was a smoker, Richard. He was another smoker,
another
and I
one.
could never.
It
Yeah,
wasn't a 40 a day man,
and
was
he
he?
was 35, but the amazing thing he used to get really nervous before like Celtic games. You know, as the assistant manager,
Right.
he used to get nervous because you know
Mm-hmm.
he cared, which is a great thing. But then you think. How can you? The guy used to take penalties. He scored a penalty for Scotland against England at Wembley.
Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
can you? How can you be? You know, you wouldn't sort of. I couldn't ever understand that. But that's because you
No.
know he did care. But how can you be that cool to stand up? Must have been 100,000 at Wembley and
Uh,
just pop it in and you know just look like a nonchalant and you know it's just
yeah.
all comes with the territory. But no, he was a you know a top player and you know he's a top bloke, John Robertson.
Mm. And talking of penalties, funnily enough, Darren Fletcher's first game, or the first one he remembers as a spectator, Forest beat Man City 4-0 in February 1980. And guess who missed a penalty? John Robertson. He said he
How
never
dare
missed
you?
penalties. He
Yeah, he
never
did.
missed
Yeah.
penalties. Yeah,
Oh, well, they
that was
won
one he
anyway. Didn't
4-0.
matter.
It's not too bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And talking about Darren Fletcher's first game as a spectator, I wanted to just finish off this fantastic chat we've had with your first game as a spectator and how much you remember about it. It maybe, you know, was it connected with obviously your dad was a player? Was
Yeah.
it connected to just saying, "Oh, I'm off to the football"? What was that first game?
Well, my first game as so when I was younger, my dad, who was a professional,
Mm.
so I ended up being born in Nottingham because my dad had done a teaching degree, a biology degree. I think it may have been at Loughborough College,
Oh
Loughborough
yeah.
University.
Mm.
And then we'd moved back to Norfolk, and I used to go and watch my dad. My dad used to play locally at Great Yarmouth, so I spent a lot of my younger days, great days, Great Yarmouth
Mm.
Town, the old bandstand there, you know. So I used to love that. But the first game, and I don't know, I didn't go to many games with my dad at all.
Right.
But my first ever game, believe it or not, and I don't know how this came about, was the 1980 FA Cup final. It was
Wow.
West Ham Arsenal, and Trevor
Yeah.
Brooking scored
Yes.
10, 12 minutes to go, diving header.
Yeah. I think his
Uh,
only
uh,
diving header in his career, wasn't it?
was
I
it
believe.
was it there? Well, I didn't know that. But I don't know what the connection was. I don't know why we weren't West Ham or Arsenal
No.
fans, but that's a pretty amazing first game to go to. And I don't think I went to, because my dad played all the time. I don't think I
Mm.
ever sort of as a youngster went. Oh no, I did. I went to Norwich Tottenham once and met Glenn Hoddle and Ozzy Ardiles
Wow.
in the because my dad used to play with a guy called John Gorman. Remember John Gorman? He was
Yes,
Glenn's
I do. Yeah, yeah,
assistant.
yeah, yeah,
So there
yeah.
was some connection there. And that was obviously as a youngster, I ended up falling out with Glenn Hoddle all those sort of years later when I stupidly turned down a chance to play for England. But then
Oh,
we're
yes.
all right now. Again, we won't
Yeah,
go
yeah.
into that, but
No,
no, the
I
FA
don't
Cup
think.
final. So that's a
Wow.
pretty
Yeah.
special memory that with my dad as well. He's no longer with us, but that
Mm.
being my uh, first ever game, and yeah, FA Cup final, West Ham 1, Arsenal 0.
Yeah. Well, you sort of you're coming down, aren't you? After that, if you go to Wembley for an FA Cup final,
Yes,
then your
good
next
point.
game might not be so glamorous. But brilliant. Well, Chris, I've really enjoyed our chat today. It has been revelatory to a certain extent, and I've really appreciated your time. Would there be anything? Last question. Would there be anything in your memory of when you suddenly decided, if you loved football, and I'm assuming you do love football, some players don't, and some pundits don't, but B, that moment that hooked you in, you went, oh yeah, this is the game for me. Because I know you said, you were playing cricket, basketball when you were at school because it didn't look like it was going to turn around. So was there that pivotal moment where you went, yep, this is where I'm going to go?
Um, so are you talking about my sort of, I mean, my love for football? I remember when I was at first school painting a picture. It's, it's an awful painting with me as a Nottingham Forest player, actually,
Oh,
wanting to
really?
be a professional footballer. Uh,
Mm,
but but no, football was everything to me as a youngster. I mean, it was football and cricket. It was outside all day, going down the recreation ground in the village which we lived in. It was an outdoor life. And then with what happened to me, the rejection. I get my opportunity at the 12, have the rejection, and then I thought it wasn't going to happen, but then it's sort of it was the moment. Yeah, mate, I suppose getting the opportunity again, and then everything happening so quickly. A couple of school team game, county cup semi final, county cup final, hat
mm,
trick in each, and the Norwich City Scout there, and that's where I just everything sort of went through the roof. But I never took anything for granted throughout my career. And I said I sort of always had a good understanding of where I was in a pecking order. I knew players who I was better than, and I knew players who weren't, and I could accept certain situations. But I look back, and I can do at the end of my footballing career and reflect. And could I have done things differently and better? Well, obviously, in a
yeah.
lot of situations. But I feel really lucky, and I genuinely do feel really lucky to have played football, because people to give the right arm to, that loads of kids grow up and want to
Mm,
be footballers. And I was fortunate to have a pretty decent career, and I feel lucky because of that. But I thank my dad because of that, because without his influence, there is not a jot that I would have got anywhere near football. That was him pushing and driving, and really talk about the importance of fitness through my teenage years. And I used to hate cross country, My dad used
Yeah.
to take me out. We used to do track work where I used to run 800 meters, have a one-to-one
Wow.
recovery, a 12-minute break, and do it again. And then when I went, when I was actually got the chance at Norwich City again, and I didn't know this was happening at the time. When I went down to Norwich, when I got the chance again, uh, I was a machine, and that was all down to him really, and sort of all the work which he'd done. I don't necessarily think that he didn't ever necessarily want me to. I'm not saying he didn't want me to be a professional footballer. What he wanted, he was always big on team sports,
Mm,
and he wanted me to play to the highest level at everything which I did. So that was his driving thing, because that's the beauty of sport, and that's where you get your mates, and that's what I've tried to push my kids into, team sports. And of course, they have to make their own minds up, but
mm,
you go to school and you have your friends from school, but you think about sport and sort of finding your tribe and having a common interest. And I think sport is absolutely brilliant for that. I think it's essential, and it has of course, the sort of health benefits
mm,
as well. But that was always about the social aspect as much as anything. I used to love my cricket teas. I mean, what a great sport
mm.
cricket is, where you can have
Oh,
cake
wow.
and sandwiches and sausage rolls at the break. And
Yeah.
my dad's mum used to always come and watch us when I was younger, my nanny and things, and she used to go in with all the players and have that. There was, I don't know if you know your cricket, but there's
Oh, I
that
do. Yeah,
etiquette
yeah,
where
yeah. Of
you let all the players go in first, the ones who have played, and
course.
my nanny just
Yeah.
used to just wander in, get a,
Right.
get a sausage
Get the
roll,
cucumber
walk
sandwiches. Yeah.
by. There we go. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so great, great days. That's where I always think about those younger days, and no, that was the grounding and the biggest part of my life, and days which I look back, with my dad and my nanny and things, and great grounding, great memories down to
Well,
them.
I think that's a fitting place to end, and it's really been such a pleasure to have you on It Started with a Kick today, Chris. I've got a little surprise for you. Unfortunately, it hasn't arrived yet. But do you collect programs from your playing career at all?
I do like memorabilia. My nanny actually used to do cuttings books for us,
Oh,
like
right. Okay.
huge. But our cellar got flooded actually, and we lost
Oh,
a few
dear.
of them. But she used to go to the paper shop every morning in the suburb of Norwich, Helsden, and buy papers and do and like cut
Wow.
them out and do folders. I mean, that is amazing. Like, she was an
Yeah.
amazing supporter. I got one,
Good.
one
Well,
amazing.
you got a base to build on, but I was trying to track down the Norwich QPR program for that first substitution fee.
Ah,
Couldn't find it, but what I did find was that first Premier League game at Arsenal, and it's literally about to drop through my door. So when it does, I'm going to send it on to you. But
oh,
guess who's
brilliant.
on the front? Guess who's on the front cover of the Arsenal Norwich game from August 1992?
Who's on the front? Tony Adams.
No, Ian Wright. So I'm sure
Ian Wright.
when you next
Ah,
bump into him and you have the program, say, "What happened to this game again, Ian? Just run it through again."
yeah.
I'm sure he'd love that. He,
Yeah.
he would love that.
Oh, yeah. No, well, do you know what? I'd sort of joked with him at times because I've, worked with him over the years.
Yeah.
I used to play as a centre half. I played against him as a centre half numerous times. I remember him scoring a hat trick against me at
Mm,
Carrow Road. He was some player, honestly. He was
yeah.
he was a brilliant finisher. He was a
Yeah.
bit grumpy back then,
Mm, mm. But he's
but he
he's
was.
obviously turned
Who
into a
who am I to
very
call anybody grumpy? But he was.
no.
Oh, he was wonderful. He was. God, in awe of him as a player.
Well, as a Palace fan, I do remember his early career and where he has to obviously he puts all his success down to Steve Coppell finding him when he was playing in
Yeah,
Greenwich on
yeah.
Sunday league stuff. So again, Thank you very much, Chris. Been a pleasure. Enjoy Glasgow for another weekend of fun, no doubt. And
Yeah.
as I say, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon.